Namashri Yatirajaya Vivekananda Surai Sachid Sukha Swarupaya Swamine Tapahadine. Now, last time we discussed this Greenacre meeting, which is informal meeting, and Swamiji was there for 2 weeks, and he immensely liked it because it was a break from the ordinary lectures. You go to this city, that city, take train, and you see with your luggages, and then these lectures and interviews. It was a break from all that, and Swamiji felt, you see, teaching a la Hindu. That means, you see, you informally teach, you sit in a place and disciples gather around you and you talk and talk. So this kind of thing he enjoyed very much. So this was a new thing for him, you see, after a hectic 1 year's lecturing. Now, Swamiji, we have talked about one Bagley, who was the wife of the governor in Detroit, in whose place he stayed and lectured, etc., etc. So this Bagley had also come to Anisquam, to the eastern coast. Swamiji is now in the eastern coast, not in the Midwest region, USA. And there he went again after 1 year in the village Anisquam. Anisquam is the place where Swamiji first gave a public lecture in his whole life till that point. That is the first lecture. So he was, you see, Professor Wright was there, you know, who introduced him to the parliament. And Bagley was there, and this is a small town. So almost all the persons living there permanently knew him by this time. So he came there at Bagley's place and informally talked to them also. And shortly after that, he received the first big bundles of mail from India. And he discovered that, you see, especially some Calcutta people, they are saying that he is a political agitator. The Swamiji is not liking this idea. He said that I may have criticized the British government in general certain times, but that does not mean that I am a political agitator. I have nothing to do with politics. I am for spirituality, and first spiritual things should be attended to, then all other things will follow. So this theme he will also develop later on. He said in India, he would say in India that first deluge the country with spiritual thoughts, spiritual ideas, then other things will follow. So this is the one thing. And he wrote during this time a letter to his friend Manmatha Babu, which gives an idea of how he sees America and its society. So I shall not read the whole letter, but it is a long letter. He's writing to his boyhood friend, Manmatha Babu, who was then the Postmaster General of Madras, a very big post. He says, among other things, that about this sense of decorum in this country, you have to always keep yourself covered from neck to foot in the presence of women. At least at that time, that was the thing. While women sometimes are not embarrassed to expose their bodies above the waist. So he's writing this, and he's saying that our method That means the Indians use generally, especially in the villages, cow dung cake as the fuel. And normally in the Orthodox families, they squat and take their food from plates. Now, these things are considered very primitive by the Western people he is writing. While he says that here he finds at least one horrible thing, that means from the sanitary point of view, that from the same glass many people drink. Now, he is again saying that in our country, parents, they suffer to manage the marriage of their daughters. You see, because it is their headache to have the daughter settle. Here in this country, it is the opposite. It is the girls who have to find their would-be husbands. So you see, though there were also another movement there in America, some of the women were never married and they were very prominent in public life. That was happening, and Swamiji would very soon meet some of them and get their help also. He says that people are very rich. There is abundance of wealth and beauty, abundance of knowledge everywhere. It's a knowledge in the sense, not spiritual knowledge. It means the secular knowledge. And he is in the, especially in the East Coast. East Coast in those days, that was the height of intellectual activity, because the Britishers landed there, and Britishers had with them this intellect. You must remember that even before the Britishers conquered India, they produced scientists like Newton and Boyle. He says that in spite of this searching for would-be husbands, he did not find any unmarried woman who was not chaste. That means extramarital relations. So he mentions all these things, and he says that he is received very well in certain families. They they treat him as one of their own, etc., which is true. He also mentions here in this letter that this Madras meeting, this Madras address, which was organized by Alasinga Perumal, this has reached him, and you see, we have mentioned about this fact. But this your address coming to him opened up another chapter in his life. Chapter in the sense that he now, you see, understood that he has to take up the role of rejuvenation of Hinduism in India, because in 1192, your political power went from the Hindus to the Muslims. And then, you see, in due course, in the 18th century, Britishers came and took over India gradually. So this has been, you see, many years of slavery, national slavery with no freedom, etc. So there was a degeneration in the Hindu mind. They were thinking that they were unable, not capable. So India needed rejuvenation. So he would write to a reply to the Madras address, which, among other things, he would deal with the fact that the origin of Hinduism, its different forms through which the modern Hinduism has come to us today, but its organic unity, theoretical and practical, and its all-embracing grandeur. So that he mentions, you see, and he talks about the abuses incessantly hurled against the head of a prostrate race in season out of season by the missionaries, of course. And he said that let us take our stand at the central truth of the Atman, which is in some form or other accepted by all the religions of India. We must first, you see, ourselves find that Atman and be gods to make others gods. Make others gods means we are already God in the sense that potentially we are, each one of us is a god. That is potential, that is not, you see, remaining hidden in us. This is not manifest. Then another point he would make, India, by Indians, they call their own country motherland, because a mother is much more to a Hindu than the father. And so the country is dear, country is, you see, as Rama himself said to Lakshmana after the victory in Lanka. It was proposed that he stay for certain times in Lanka. So he said that though Lanka is a golden city full of gold, yet it does not pleases him. Mother and the motherland, they're higher than the heaven, he says. Janani Janma Bhumischa Sargadapi Gariyasi. So Indians have this idea, you see, when they visualize their country in an emotional way, they think of it as a mother, as a living mother. So he says that this mother, ancient mother, has awakened once more, sitting on her throne, rejuvenated, more glorious than ever. Proclaim her to all the world with the voice of peace and benediction. So this is another theme which he will develop later on. And because he is the first person in modern times to speak on behalf of all the Hindus and Hinduism and the whole of India. So this, you see, this is the beginning of this kind of work. And again, he understood that his monastic brothers who are in India, with whom he did not communicate much for a long time, they needed to be roused up. To them, he said, wrote that great men are those who build highways for others with their heart's blood. This has been taking place through eternity, that one builds a bridge by laying down his own body, and thousands of others cross the river through itself to work with undaunted energy. What fear? So this exhortation, this kind of, will become more frequent. That means two types of work. One is giving a message for India in general, for to the nation at large, and to enthuse, organize the monastic brethren who was living their lives in the old fashion. That means this tapas, austerity, meditation, and this going to pilgrimage. This was their life, you see. So he asked them to organize that you have enough of spirituality now, it must be given to the people. For that, organization is necessary. This organization, he had the idea in America. Previously, he had no idea of the power of the organization. So he saw it in America and was enchanted. And then we find him now in the eastern coast. We have talked about Thursby, Miss Thursby, who organized this Greenacre meeting. This Thursby was a highly well-connected person, and she made the contact possible between Sarah Boole and Swami Vivekananda. And it was a godsend for Swami Vivekananda because it opened up another big chapter in his life. Sarah Boole was the widow of the world famous pianist, Mr. Oli Boole, a Norwegian man settled in USA, and not only settled in USA, he bought huge tracts of land and brought many Norwegian people to USA. And there was a huge difference between the age of Madame Boole and Mr. Boole, 40 years of difference. So naturally, Mr. Boole had passed away and Mrs. Boole was surviving, you see. And Mrs. Boole was in some sort because when you become famous, any person become famous, there are critics around you who will try to harm you at least mentally. So she was the person who bolstered up always your Mr. Oli Boole, organized his concerts and toured different countries, you see, different lands, you see, with Mr. Oli Boole. So Mrs. Boole was equipped in a sense. And she was immensely spiritual in the sense that Swami Vivekananda, when he met her, immediately could understand that it was very spiritual. That's why he called her Dhira Mata, the wise mother, and used to take her advice also. And she, in her turn, wrote him once a letter with which he sent also, say, some money at $500, which is a big amount in those days, to Vivekananda, saying that had Oli Boole been alive today, he would have considered you as his son. And, so we are sure that that she regarded Swami Vivekananda as her son, and throughout her life she would live another 17 years. And all the time she was trying to promote the work of Swami Vivekananda. That means she lived 9 years after Vivekananda passed away, and all the time she was promoting, donating something here, there, etc., to support the work started by Swami Vivekananda. This was a very fruitful thing, and she made it possible because her house was spacious. It was in Cambridge, which is in the Boston metropolitan area. And in her house, towards the end of the year, she arranged a series of daily lectures, weekly and daily classes, weekly lectures. So for a certain time. So this was a solid work, and Swami Vivekananda was tired of ordinary lecturing. He wanted to sit down and write books. He did not find any time. He was too busy. And then in this place, his talks produced one of the first books, The 6 Lessons on Raja Yoga. This is from the talks he gave at the place of Mrs. Bull. So this was a very great thing, that another type of work is beginning, and it is because what Swami Vivekananda was doing was lecturing from place to place on invitation. And when you lecture, what happens? Most people are not sattvic. They will say, oh yes, it was a good lecture and I enjoyed it very much. But if you ask that person that, can you say 3 salient points of what the speaker said, they will not be able, because it does not, if you are not receptive enough, you cannot retain. Finally, it has little effect. You spend your energy, but it is little effect is there. So, but here, when you do in a place classes with small groups, which is a constant group, then some permanent result happens, and out of that books may come out. So here he had this first thing. He had not this thing, you see, allowed her to stay there and continue daily classes and talks as if it was his own home. So that, you see, that was provided by Mrs. Bull at Cambridge, the Dhira Mata of Swamiji, and Dhira Mata would later on come to India also during Swamiji's time. Then he was in October, he was already in a small place called Baltimore. So it is in the East Coast, where he was invited by 3 young brothers, Burmans. The Burmans, you see, the name suggests that they're originally Dutch. And there were actually 5 brothers, and 3 of them was in that place. That means Baltimore, where they talked to Swamiji about the founding of a university where all religions would be taught. And Swamiji was some sort of lured by the idea, and they invited him. So he went there, but they are very poor people, so they fixed you see, cheap hotels for him, and these hotels refused to admit say, a dark man from India. So finally, a better hotel was found, and kept him there, and he gave a few lectures. You see, he was sympathizing with this. They are very young, but they are all in religion. Some of them had tried some business and had some, you see, but a very young age, they all entered into religion, and they had enthusiasm, etc. And they liked Swamiji, and Swamiji also spent some time with them, though they did not give him much money-wise. Then he also gave in the meantime, everywhere, as usual, newspaper reporters would come to him and ask for his interview, and he used to talk to them. And one of the ideas Swamiji said that there are, you see, beautiful things in America, but they have too little of religion. While India has a surplus of it, and you see, there should be some exchange. I think the world would be better if some of India's surplus of religion could be sent over here, while it would be to India's profit if its people could have some of America's industrial advancement and civilization. So this thought also was also with him in the beginning, and give and take, as he said, is the rule. Now, after that, of this short stay with the Brahmans, he is, in fact, he was supposed to stay a little longer. For some unknown reason, he said that he has to go to New York. He cancelled many meetings in this small town and dashed up to New York. So now we find him that, and all the time, he did not forget the lady who was so generous and kind to him, Madame Hale of Chicago. So almost every week, he would write something to Madame Hale, how he was keeping and what is happening, etc. So that is another happening. And at this time, when he was with Bull, Madame Hale came to the city. And though Madame Bull invited Madame Hale to come to her place, because Vivekananda could not go, he was very, very busy. Each morning there were classes. And there were other speakers also. Swamiji would hear them also. So he became very busy during his Cambridge stay. Madam Hill did not accept the invitation. Do not know why. It may be a kind of jealousy that Swami Vivekananda was held by her, and now Madam Bull has taken the role of a mother, etc. It may be like this, but we do not know what happened exactly. After that, we found him in many Swamiji was talking about religion, but also talking about India's customs and society. So, and certain times he talked about the women of India. He said that women in statesmanship, managing territories, governing countries, even making war, have proved themselves equal to men, if not superior. And he said that India, what happens that if woman comes to rule a country, etc., normally he is less corrupt than a man, because he says that women have some natural values which they do not shed, they do not degenerate. Men degenerate first. So this he makes, and he says that even John Stuart Mill has in his books uh, pointed this about the Indian women, this particularity. And he says that each nation beyond a general humanity develops a certain peculiarity of character. So in religion, so in politics, so in character. And now he says that what is an Aryan? Aryan is a man whose birth is through religion. If you take up our law books, he said that there is much discussion on the prenatal influence of a mother and the child. So he says that before he was born, his mother was fasting and praying intensely. And so what he is due to her. She gave the compliments like this. So he says that there are three types of civilization, especially in the Western context. One is the Roman, the Greek, and the Hindu type. The Roman type is the type of organization, conquest, steadiness, but lacking in emotional nature, appreciation of beauty and the higher emotions. Its defects is cruelty. Cruelty. The Greek is essentially enthusiastic for the beautiful but frivolous and has a tendency to become immoral. The Hindu type is essentially metaphysical and religious, but lacking in all the elements of organization and work. The Roman type is now represented by the Anglo-Saxons, the Greek type more by the French than any other nation, and the old Hindus do not die. Each type has its advantage in this new land of promise, and he says, mix these up together and bring in the new civilization. And let me tell you, this would be done by women. So this was a talk on Indian women. And after the talk, during that years, that was we are in 1894 Christmas, unknown to Swamiji, some of the listeners sent a beautiful gift with a letter to the mother of Swami Vivekananda in Calcutta, saying that we have heard that what is your son today is your gift. So, you see, please accept this as a little gift from us during this Christmas time. It was something, you see, they were moved so much by this talk on motherhood. And sometimes before this episode in Cambridge, he was thinking of, is he going to Europe or returning to India, because there is not much work here. But then he changed his mind when once he was in Cambridge. He saw that what potential it is there. Now, from here, another thing was happening in Mrs. Bull's place. He met, you see, because her place was, you see, it was like a club of intellectual people, of social reformers gathering. So many eminent people of America, both men and women, used to be there at her drawing room. There, for example, Swamiji met Josiah Royce, who was a philosopher with view of absolute idealism. Idealism in the sense that here there is much difference in this world among many things, see, various things, but they're united somewhere in the universe, in a cosmic mind, something like that, you see. So that sort of idea that unity exists. Later on, he modified his idea a little. He said that reality, he saw the reality as a universe of ideas or signs which occur in the process of being interpreted by an infinite community of minds. So this is called absolute pragmatism. So instead of absolute idealism, absolute. So, but he was a philosopher. Then he met here also Jane Addams, who was the first American woman to be awarded Nobel Peace Prize and is recognized as the founder of the social work profession in the USA. He met here, you see, he had met him earlier also at Plymouth, where he addressed the convention of the Free Religious Association set up by Mr. Higginson. Now, Colonel Higginson was one of the Secret Six who helped Captain Brown to attack the people who were having slaves before the Civil War I am talking about. He was a white man, but he was against this slavery. So he used to attack, you see, them. So secretly, he was one of these persons behind them. But later on, he settled down for a religious thing. That means free religious association is an offshoot from Unitarian Church, where there is much rules and so a little freedom they wanted. So he was there very often in this Mrs. Boole's drawing room. Another was the lady, the philanthropist, Alice Longfellow, the daughter of the poet. Then there's Irving Babbitt, who is famous for his vision of new humanism. His humanism implied a broad knowledge of various moral and religious traditions. That you must, this new humanism, you must be conversant with the morals and the general way different traditions, religious traditions. And he also met Professor Munsterberg. Munsterberg was a professor of Harvard University who is famous for applied psychology. That means psychology applied to business your circles, applied to your educational, the clinical, medical, legal, in all these spheres, you apply psychology. So such men, they were great in thought. That's why Swamiji wrote in at one time that Indians are exhorting him to come back to India. But I am a vagabond here. In India also I am a vagabond. But the difference is there here that I am with very educated people, leaders of thoughts, where in India this thing is lacking, he said. So that is another thing which Swamiji got from here. Then we find him, at least towards the end, you see, he, as I've said, that in her place, Madame Booth's place, he talked about Upanishad. He gave lectures on 8 Upanishads. That means classes, I mean, not lectures, mainly classes. Though weekly there used to be lecture. And he held classes on Raja Yoga. So this yoga and Vedanta, which is the backbone of Hindus, philosophically speaking, these two systems. So this he brought forward at the almost at the end of December. He would find new ways and new visions. That means he loved Greenacre. This Greenacre-like experience would come to him next year in Thousand Island Park. And in the meantime, what has happened since he was often in New York, you see, he's in East Coast. New York, he started already by the end of the year an organization. Organization was needed not only for the teaching, religious, and he was receiving money, he was corresponding with people, etc., etc. It was too much for him, all this burden. He's keeping these accounts of money and the receipts, etc., etc., and moving about with books and clothes from place to place. So an organization and a place and an address of his own was necessary. So he created this Vedanta Society in New York. That happened in 1894, towards the second half of 1894. That is another great thing. So things were moving in another direction and Swamiji was very happy. So I invite you to ask questions. There is no question. I suppose.
No, Swamiji, I have not seen any questions in the chat. So if people they would like to ask you a question in person. So go ahead now.
Okay, so now I invite you. See, you must think that you see his work is taking another shape, another orientation, as I have said, both in America. That means he's more thinking of your doing work intensively. So that was happening. You see, that means through intense work with a small group of people, you have this future carriers of message. That is, you see, otherwise it is not possible through ordinary lecturing. Because people, you see, if you are not, as I have mentioned, if you are not sattvic enough, you cannot retain much. You will appreciate a talk. You will say that he talked nicely, but you will not gain anything because you have not received anything. That is happening. So that is an organization has started. First thing, first organization made by Vivekananda in the name of Vedanta anywhere in the world. In New York, he did it. And he noted that compared to Midwest, the Eastern Coast is much more intellectual, much more serious. That you see, that is America is a hodgepodge nation. So it depends upon the caliber of, you see, all countries in Europe, they are not same. And they have difference, a high level of difference in culture, type of culture. Italy has one type, France has one type, England has another type, Germany has another type. These are the prominent nations of Europe. So you find this in the eastern coast where the first people from Europe, especially from England, and the Puritans, they landed. So that he noted. So there in New York, he started his organization. There are two other things, as I have said. He began to rouse India, the whole of India nation. That is another type of work he started from America. And the third thing, enthusing his brother disciples to begin a new kind of life. That means in an organizational way, working for the good of the society. They had enough spirituality. Now this should be utilized for the sake of the society. So this is his main things achieved so far. Now I would ask you to take up the meditation on this, what he would say to the Madras disciples, in reply to the Madras address. And this vision of India as a motherland rejuvenated. This should be our topic of meditation. Our next topic of meditation would be the Swamiji's idea of mixing up in the different types of civilization, as he gave through an imagery of the lamb and the lion coexisting. And that means a lion is representing the rajas of the West, and the lamb is the meekness of the Hindus. So they must be combined. So that is our next meditation. That means the mixing up of the civilization, the types. And now our next topic will be on, we have mentioned today that towards the end of the year 1894, he started giving talks on Vedanta and on Raja Yoga. And one of the lines oft quoted from Raja Yoga is, each soul is potentially divine. The goal is to manifest this divinity within by controlling nature, external and internal. Do this either by work or worship or philosophy or psychic control and be free. This is the whole of religion. Now this idea, the simultaneous practice of all the yogas, though he says that by one or more and all of these and be free, he preferred that it should be all. That's and even he went to the extent of saying that one who does not do it, his character has not been well grounded in the crucible of Ramakrishna. This whole idea he gave to your painter who did it for the logo of the order of Ramakrishna. That means the serpent encircling the swan, which is floating on wavy water, and the lotus is there. This symbolism should be our subject of meditation. Okay, so since there are no questions, we leave the meeting now.
Swamiji, maybe I have one question for you.
Yes.
At that time, Swami Vivekananda, he was depicting the West as a lion and India as lamb.
Yes.
So what would you think that if he was here today, has the depiction changed, that lion was the West and lamb has been India? Would it be different now?
The lion has changed a little, especially America's west coast, especially the west coast today. It is full of spirituality. That means at least 50,000 people in the west coast sincerely practice meditation and yoga very sincerely, and so that way America has changed a little, though not substantially. It is, and India has changed a lot because India is asserting itself. It has changed a lot. But Indians in general retain also this your lack of organization and your enterprise even today. In general, I'm speaking, because India is vast now and it is the changes are very rapid.
There is another question which just came in.
Yes.
Swamiji, which is the first text that makes reference to Raja Yoga?
The first text which makes a reference to Raja Yoga, that is, you see, that has to be discovered. You see, it is, I cannot answer this question like this. That means you say where this word Raja Yoga first occurs. In other words, it means this, your question. That we have to make research for it. Yes. Then any other question?
No more questions, Swamiji.
Raja Vidya, there is one expression like Raja Vidya in the Raja Vidya in Gita itself, but that is not Raja Yoga. Okay, thank you all.